as if each one brought me closer to a terrifying abyss. The setting sun had painted the sky in a mournful orange, and the long shadows of the trees seemed like giant, menacing creatures. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to escape from that horrific creature, from the wrath of its family, from the curse that had befallen me. It all started with a horrific incident. I, Armin, a 27-year-old boy, was walking through the dense forest when I suddenly saw a strange and otherworldly creature. A creature with white, shimmering skin, glowing eyes, and delicate wings that shimmered in the fading sunlight. The creature lay wounded and lifeless on the ground, as if it had fallen from the sky. I was amazed by the sight of this creature and rushed to its aid. But in a sudden movement, the creature rose from its spot and stared at me with terror. I shivered from the terrifying fear in its eyes. I wanted to run, but it was too late. The creature attacked me with its wings, and in an attempt to defend myself, I unintentionally burned it with the torch that was by my side. A horrific scream echoed from the creature, and I jumped back in horror. The wounded and burning creature fell to the ground and died amidst smoke and fire. From that moment on, my life turned into a nightmare filled with fear, anxiety, and regret. Every night I had a terrible nightmare of the creature's death, and its screams echoed in my ears. Enraged by the death of their loved one, the creature's family was looking for me to avenge their death. Otherworldly creatures that appeared in the darkness of the night and followed me with their hateful eyes. I had no peace anymore. Every day I waited for them to find me and punish me for what I'd done. Now, in this dark and haunted forest, I was looking for a way to escape. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I just knew I had to stay alive. I had to escape the wrath of that creature's family. Suddenly, a sound echoed in the absolute silence of the forest. A sound like a moan. A sound that shook me to my core. It seemed that the otherworldly creatures had found me. I took a deep breath and gathered all my strength to run. I ran as fast as I could through the darkness of the night, leaving behind the long shadows of the trees that seemed like giant, menacing creatures. I didn't know how far I could run. I didn't know what fate awaited me. I just knew I had to escape. I had to stay alive. As I ran through the dense forest, the darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with its oppressive weight. The trees, like skeletal sentinels, reached out with their gnarled branches, as if trying to drag me into their shadowy embrace. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a smell that filled my lungs and made me feel even more trapped. I stumbled over hidden roots and rocks, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. My breath came in ragged gasps, and my muscles ached with exhaustion. But I dared not slow down, for I knew that the creatures were behind me, their footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. I could feel their presence, a cold, malevolent aura that sent shivers down my spine. They were like shadows, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the moment to strike. I could almost hear their whispers taunting me, promising me a slow and agonizing death. I didn't know how long I ran, but it felt like an eternity. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, a labyrinth of darkness and despair. I was lost, alone, and utterly terrified. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I saw a glimmer of light in the distance, a small, flickering flame that seemed to beckon me forward. With renewed hope, I stumbled towards it, my legs burning with pain. As I drew closer, I could see that the light was coming from a small cottage nestled amidst the trees. It was a quaint, old-fashioned cottage with a thatched roof and a chimney puffing out wisps of smoke. I reached the door and pounded on it with my fist. fists. "Please help me," I cried out, my voice hoarse and desperate. The door creaked open, and an old woman appeared in the doorway. She was tall and slender, with long white hair that cascaded down her shoulders. Her eyes were deep and wise, and her face was etched with the lines of 1,000 stories. "Come in, child," she said, her voice soft and soothing. "You are safe here." I hesitated for a moment, but the fear within me was too strong to resist. I stepped into the cottage, and the door closed behind me with a soft click. The inside of the cottage was warm and inviting, filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and herbs. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The old woman led me to a chair and sat me down. She brought me a mug of hot tea and a plate of bread and cheese. I ate and drank ravenously, the food giving me a much-needed boost of energy. As I ate, the old woman watched me with a gentle smile. "You are running from something, aren't you?" she asked. I nodded, unable to speak. "I know what you are running from," she said. "The creatures of the night. They are drawn to those who are filled with fear and despair." "What do they want?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "They want your soul," she replied. "But you're not alone. There are those who can help you." She reached out and placed her hand on mine. Her touch was warm and comforting, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "You are strong, child," she said. "You have the power to overcome your fears." I looked into her eyes and saw a flicker of hope. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of belief that I might actually survive. "Thank you," I whispered. The old woman smiled. "You are welcome, child. Now rest. You will need your strength for what lies ahead." I nodded and curled up on a couch in front of the fire. I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was still racing with fear and uncertainty. But as I lay there, listening to the crackling of the fire and the soft snoring of the old woman, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a world where there were no monsters, no fear, and only peace. As I lay on the couch, listening to the crackling fire and the soft snoring of the old woman, I felt a sense of peace wash over me for the first time in a long time. I was safe, at least for now. But I knew that the creatures would not give up easily. They would come for me, and I would have to be ready to face them. I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep, but my dreams were troubled. I was back in the forest, running from the creatures, their dark figures closing in on me. I could hear their whispers, taunting me, telling me that I was doomed. I woke up with a start, my heart pounding in my chest. I was bathed in sweat, and my breath was coming in short gasps. I looked around the room, but it was empty. The old woman was nowhere to be seen. I got up from the couch and went to the window. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the forest. The birds were singing, and the air was filled with the scent of pine needles. I took a deep breath of fresh air and felt a sense of determination wash over me. I was not going to let the creatures defeat me. I was going to fight for my life. I knew that I needed to find a way to protect myself from the creatures. I needed to find a way to defeat them. I remembered what the old woman had said about there being others who could help me. I wondered who they were and where I could find them. I decided to stay in the cottage for a while and rest. I needed to be strong for what lay ahead. I spent the next few days exploring the cottage and the surrounding forest. I found a hidden spring and a small garden where the old woman grew herbs and vegetables. I also found a library filled with ancient books on magic and folklore. I spent hours hours reading the books, learning about the creatures of the night and how to defeat them. I learned about spells and potions, and I practiced casting them in secret. I knew that I was not a witch, but I was determined to learn whatever I could to protect myself. One day, while I was exploring the forest, I came across a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a large stone circle. As I approached the circle, I felt a strange energy pulsing from it. I knew that this was the place where I would find the others who could help me. I stepped into the circle and closed my eyes. I took a deep breath and focused my energy. Suddenly, I felt a presence around me. I opened my eyes and saw a group of people standing in a circle around me. They were all dressed in long robes, and their faces were hidden in hoods. I could feel their power, and I knew that they were the ones I had been waiting for. "You are welcome, child," said one of the figures in a deep, resonant voice. "We have been expecting you." I was speechless. I had finally found the others who could help me. "We will teach you how to defeat the creatures of the night," said the figure. "But first, you must learn to control your fear." I nodded, determined to learn everything I could. The figures began to teach me the ways of magic. They taught me how to cast spells, how to make potions, and how to control my own energy. I trained for many days, and I learned quickly. I was eager to use my new powers to defeat the creatures and protect myself. Finally, the day came when I was ready to face the creatures. I said goodbye to my new teachers and set off into the forest. I knew that the creatures were waiting for me, and I was ready for them. I walked through the forest, my senses on high alert. I could feel their presence all around me, but I was not afraid. I came to a clearing where I had seen the creatures before. They were there, waiting for me. There were 3 of them, tall and dark with glowing eyes. They looked at me with hatred and contempt. "You cannot defeat us," one of them hissed. "We are too powerful for you." I stood before the creatures, my heart pounding in my chest, but my mind clear and focused. I had spent weeks training for this moment, and I was ready. I raised my hands and began to chant a spell. The creatures recoiled in fear, but it was too late. The spell struck them with blinding light, and they screamed in agony. They tried to fight back, but their powers were no match for mine. I had learned to control my fear, and I was channeling that power into my spells. One by one, the creatures fell to the ground, defeated. I stood over them, victorious, and looked into their eyes. I saw the fear and hatred in their eyes, but I also saw something else, a flicker of understanding. They finally realized that I was not the weak and defenseless boy they had thought I was. I was something more. I was a survivor. I was a warrior. I was a mage. I turned away from the creatures and walked back towards the cottage. I knew that I had a long journey ahead of me, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced my fears, and I had emerged victorious. I was ready to face whatever the future held.